Well, I'm back to planting in the garden again. It's early September, springtime here in Tassie. This morning was a beautiful sunny morning and really showed us that it was spring. And the last few days have been really great. This afternoon, the clouds have come over because it's likely to rain again, and within 24 hours, we're likely to get some rain. So for me, that's a really great time to come into the garden and to get some plants in. Mostly I'm putting in seeds today. Now, I came and prepped these beds this morning. This particular one, I put a layer of compost on, but I haven't done that with all, and you'll see as I go what I have done. Now, this year I'm approaching these raised beds a little bit differently to how I have in past years, or I'm trying to at least. What I'm trying to do is to group some plants in a mixture in beds that I then plant beds successively and get some progressive growth through the season. Often in past years, I've planted a single bed with one or two plants, and that has been that way for the entire season. It has worked quite well, but there's some things where you'd like a little bit more progression coming along. But there's a couple of constraints, and one of them is that with brassicas, I do need to net them, and netting beds inhibits some of the picking of other things like silver beet, lettuce. If you've got nets over, it's a real pain, and you don't need the nets for those things. For that reason, I'm separating out brassicas from the other mixed vegetables. While I'm putting brassicas into this bed, oddly, the first thing that I'm actually going to plant is some marigolds. Now, the reason for that is that with broccoli and kale especially, I've had issues with aphids in past years. Now, marigolds give off certain chemicals which really will distract a lot of the bugs and chase them away. This is the common flowering African marigold that you'll see in gardens, and it's quite effective at it. It's not quite as effective, I think, as some of the wild marigolds that exist. Where I used to live further north in Australia, there was a marigold which grew as a weed. I believe it's an introduced species from Africa. I knew it as Stinking Roger, and it was very powerful at getting rid of things. It was very effective at getting rid of fleas. If there was fleas in the ground or in a carpet, you could just cut this Stinking Roger and lay it down, and within a few days, those fleas would be gone. So I'll put these in each corner, hoping that they deter the aphids from coming to this bed. With those in place, I can start for some seeds. Now, I'm putting two lots of brassicas in here. I've got some perennial kale, which is my own seed here, and I've got some broccoli. This is a hybrid broccoli. Now, I also want to plant some cabbage in here as well, but I don't have those seeds today, so that will have to wait. So up in this end, I will put in, they're fairly close in there, probably just two plants that I actually want to grow of the kale. Now, I'm going to put a smattering of seed in each hole, and so there'll be more plants come up, but I will actually thin them out to just the two plants to grow, because this is perennial kale and it grows really large. Now, with the broccoli, I've got 6 that I'm going to put in, and again, there'll be more than one seed go in each. There'll be probably 2 or 3 seeds at least, or more go in each hole. One of the things with seed planting is that you thin your seedlings when they come up, but seeds are a lot cheaper than putting in seedlings and often come away to a better start. So a sprinkling of seed in each, and I'll thin those out. Cover them very shallow cover. they should come up pretty quickly. Now, as I said, I also want to put some cabbage. I'll put a couple of cabbage up this end, but I haven't yet got the seed. So that's all for this bed for now, and we'll move on to the next one. With this bed, I don't have the fresh compost that I have on the other one. The reason is I put the compost on this probably at the beginning of winter, I think it was, and it's been sitting. We weeded it out this morning, anything that was growing, which wasn't a lot, and it's quite good to plant into. So what have I got? I'm going to put a little bit of lettuce in here. I'm going to put carrots in here, a little bit of beetroot, and yes, some silver beet, maybe a few radish seeds, more beetroot there, so we'll see how we go with that. So that's the mix that's going in here. Silver beet will go up that end, and carrots up this end. We can put the beetroot in between with a little bit of radish scattered around, and probably only 2 or 3 lots of lettuce, so there won't be a lot of that in here. Silver beet, of course, is going to be the taller item, and carrots will probably be the longest one in the bed, the last one that is harvested. But with that combination, this bed should produce for a while, and then I can replicate it, or very similar to it, as the season changes, into another bed in another month or two's time. So with the silver beet, I will just do 4 actual plants that I want to grow, and I'll put a few seeds in each one. Again, plenty of options if it doesn't come up, but this should be good seed. I kept this seed myself from last year. Yeah, it's 21, so it's reasonably fresh. And while 4 plants is not a lot of silver beet, it will do for the time being. And as the second bed comes in, it'll be nice to have younger silver beet continuing to come, because silver beet does change as it gets older. I prefer it when it's a younger plant and nice and tender. So up this end, I will run some little furrows and put maybe 3 rows of carrots in. Now these are Nantes. This seed is a little bit older, but I've still had fairly good germination success with it, so we'll see how it goes, but I'm putting it in reasonably thick. I might need to thin this. So this is a good early carrot, and I'll plant probably a different carrot later in the season. I'm going to very lightly cover that, but often I just water these in. But with this compost that isn't as fresh, maybe a little light covering and then watering would be the idea. Beetroot, I'll run a couple of rows across here. Now this is going to be just for some fresh eating beetroot, and I've got a couple of varieties here. I might, one is the Cylindra one, and the other one is a Detroit. So I just scatter this beetroot along. Now this beetroot is just for our fresh eating. I will be planting more beetroot today, which will be for preserving. So I'll just get this Cylindra one in here, and that's plenty for there. Lots of beetroot. And of course I'll come back and water. The Detroit I'll keep for the next bed. little bit of lettuce seed here. There's not much left and not a lot of space, so there's a couple of lettuce plants would fit in here, and maybe we might get 3 across the bed like this. With this lettuce, it's probably the best to not so much cover it as water it in, because it's very fine seed and it doesn't take much to bury it a little bit too deep. That's Simpson's lettuce that I've put in there. While that's growing, there's a little bit of radish seed here. It'll give just a few radishes around. It can be eaten while the others grow. It'll come early. Cover those back. So with both of these, I'll come back and do some watering. Despite the fact that it is going to rain, watering some of these just settles the seed a little bit overnight and starts it off, because it may be another 24 hours before I actually get that rain. With this section, I'm planting some onion plants initially. Now this lot I've grown in the egg cartons. They haven't done nearly as well as they did last year. They've been a bit haphazard. Maybe I haven't been as good at watering them or something, but just not quite as good. But I'll get them out, and I think once they're out here, they'll get underway. Now I haven't perhaps got as many as I'd like, so I've got a selection of leftover onion seeds and some red onion seeds, so I'll fill a second row with the seeds, and then I also have some beetroot seed, which I'll do at least one of these rows with beetroot. I have filled these rows with compost, and that should reduce the weed growth and give these a good start. Well, the plants went further than I expected, so I've only got this short half row here, and what I'm going to do is just put the red onions seed into that. So I'm putting little clumps of seed, scattering that along. Black seed on black compost disappears, can't see where it is, and we'll just water that in, and hopefully that'll give us a few nice salad onions. Now into this row, I'm putting some Crimson Globe beetroot. I'm wanting to fill the whole row with this because I want to grow enough beetroot for some preserving. So I'm just scattering those along the row. Now with the beetroot, I am covering it back over, but I'm not using the wheel hoe as I often would for many seeds. I'm just using the hoe me to get it under the surface, fairly shallow, because it's not a big seed and doesn't need to be deep. So that's the planting that I'm doing for today. Now I'll take you, as soon as I finish this, and show you one job that I have done in between the last film and this one. The one job that I have done between the last planting video and this one was to plant some early potatoes into this bed here. Now I've just 3 rows. They're in the hollows at the moment, and they just, well, some of them are showing through. The hollows of course will become the hills as I hill them through the season. But they're really early potatoes. They were planted right at the end of August, and they will hopefully come along in December and give us something to eat. The patch behind me I've planted with green manure. Now it's just beginning to show through as well, and it will be the next patch of potatoes. I will plant that at the end of October, beginning of November, somewhere around that point, about 2 months after I've planted this early bed. This will be the main largest crop, and it will give us the biggest bulk of potatoes. Now, there's one other thing I'd like you to look at, and that's what's happening with the tomato plants. So these are the tomato plants, and I planted these few weeks ago, and I've been babying them inside. I initially placed them above the wood heater to give them plenty of heat to germinate, and they germinated really quickly indoors like that. And then as they've grown, I've been putting them here in the sunroom, right in the sun where they're getting plenty of sun, and on cool nights taking them back indoors again. And they've done really well. As you can see, I've got two varieties here. There's Romas and Mortgage Lifter on this side. Now, what I want to do with them today is to thin them out. There is generally around about 2 plants in each spot, and I've got about 6 per punnet. I'll lift one up so you can see it better. So you'll see there's about 6 spots per punnet, and each one has 2. Now there sometimes were more than that, but I have done already 1 thinning, but it's now time to do a final thin to a single plant in each place. And to do that, I use scissors. So I just snip out the plant that isn't doing so well. Now that I have done that, they have a lot more space to grow. I will let them continue to grow in here probably for at least another week, maybe 2, depending on how they progress, before taking them out of here and transplanting them into individual tube stock, and then allow them to grow on further, moving them into the greenhouse as the weather warms up outdoors. Hopefully I'll get the number of plants that I need out of these. I have planted probably more plants than I need, but in the process you sometimes get a loss or 2, so it's always better to start with more seedlings than you actually want plants at the end. So that's the planting for September. I won't do further planting apart from those few cabbage seeds that I need to get and put in until October now, and it's just a matter of waiting for the rain to come and get the seeds germinated. Thanks for watching.